SPL approached me to do an overview video of their newly released SPL BiG stereo image bigger maker. Once it arrived at my studio, I was actually quite surprised because it's completely different from what I expected it to be. So let's take a look at the SPL BiG. I don't know how you feel, guys, but if I hear the word stereo image bigger maker or anything of that nature, I instantly think of Roland Dimension D, Eventide micro-shifting, chorus, ensembles, stuff like that. You know, you put it in and your synth gets wider, everything gets bigger and you're like, woo! But actually the SPL is quite different. And you see that once you look at the front plate. So let's go to the front plate. The SPL BiG is quite a minimalistic 500 module. You have only 3 encoders and 2 switches. On the top we have the bypass switch, so on and off and on again. Then we have the range control, which affects the frequency window. I think of that, you know, so from high, which affects only a small portion of the audio, like a really small portion, going up and opening up the window, hence the name open. And then we get just more and more frequency affected by the stereo imaging effect. And then we have the stage control, which is actually the reason why I think the SPL BiG is not your typical stereo widener. Because instead of like making everything wider, you have the label back and front. So what you're doing is you send the signal either to the back, you know, fully left, and if you turn it clockwise, fully to the front. So you position the stereo field and the sounds that are within that frequency range quite differently than you would do with your normal stereo widener. And then there is where the money is at, and that is the bigness control. So from minimal effect up to maximum effect. And this is a stepped encoder, by the way. So this is quite a great feel. Gives you a lot of trust in what you're doing. Really cool. And the little switch, which some people might overlook, is the bass. And that is, if you are familiar with SPL, they have something called air bass on their mastering compressor, the SPL Iron. And this is a passive filter system that adds bass and high to the sound. In this case, the SPL BiG, they just used the bass portion of the air bass, which makes total sense because I find you have already a very good high end once you use the SPL BiG. Not in a hyped way, but it gets like a little bit more definition in some sweet spots, in some certain scenarios. So just adding the bass control gives you like a really nice bump. And the interesting thing is that the bass is behind everything. So you could use the bass just for your master bus without using the stereo section. So you would just go like to minimum, which is like nil, and then you would activate the bass switch, and then you would still have the bass. This is not affected by the bigness knob. So this is a standalone effect, so to speak. So it's a very minimalistic design. It's 3 encoders, 2 switches, that's it. And I've talked to SPL about this, and SPL told me they had so many iterations of the SPL BiG because of the complexity of the filter design and everything that is working under the hood of the SPL BiG. So what they found out is it would be actually quite difficult to have a unit with more than 3 parameters because it would just be so complicated to do like replicate certain sounds or just go and just dial something in. And the more I watch musicians, how they work in the studio, and mixing engineers, and if I watch myself as well, it's so important to have sometimes a unit that is just easy to dial in. You know, you grab it, you turn the knob, and something is happening. And this is the same with the SPL BiG. You know, you have this big knob, I need the bigness, whoa, there it is, whoo, bigness, you know? This is the same thing that will happen with the Pultex or with 1176s. All those classics, they are quite stripped down. They have just like a very minimalistic set of parameters. You dial it in, you hear instantaneous what is going on. Oh, there I am, and go for the next track. And this works as well with the SPL BiG. So I think it's a very clever design. the SPL BiG is like a mojo unit. It is something that shouldn't be used as a very precise tool, but rather as a flexible tool that you need to tune to your ears. Just sit with it, sit down, use it, understand what it is doing. Listen to what is happening. Don't concentrate on parameters. Concentrate on your ears. Listen to the sound, how it changes, how it affects the sound, and how you can dial in some changes in the overall spaciousness of the sound. Because so many people were asking me about the signal flow of my test setup, here it is. I'm using the ADI2 Pro FSR converter, which is a reference class converter, and that is going into the SPL DMC mastering console, which SPL lended me for this demo. And the great thing about the DMC is that it has an insert point. And to that insert point, I have connected my SPL Hermes. So my SPL Hermes, as you probably know from previous videos, is my insert box. So all my outboard gear is connected to the SPL Hermes. In this case, I have the R&D R10, which is the API rack enclosure, connected to point C. And you can see that if I deactivate that insert point, you don't see any lights. But if I put it back into the signal chain, which I then can control with the SPL DMC, so I could increase the record gain, I have it activated. And the great thing is that the SPL Hermes has relays. So there is no sound degradation or anything going on. It is just the pure sound that is coming from the unit and from the converter. In this case, because I have a serial configuration up here, meaning we start here from the Elysia, going to the next Elysia, and then into the tail, and then into the BiG, and then into the character. You might think, okay, there is some colorization, but all these units, as far as I know, have a hard bypass, so there is nothing to worry about. Another point that I would like to say now, because we can see both of these units, is the build quality of the SPL BiG. I really enjoy the build quality of the BiG encoder and also of the smaller ones. And actually, I think they are the same quality and the same build as from the SPL Hermes. So this is absolutely insane and speaks volumes about the build quality, because the SPL Hermes is around 5,000 euros and the SPL BiG is just a tenth of it. It's like 500. And to find the same build quality in the encoder as you would have found with the SPL Hermes, or at least like 95% of that build quality, is just insane. Really like that, and thank you SPL for building good quality units, because there's nothing more frustrating than paying loads of money and then finding a device that has just like lack of build quality. At least for me, I hate it. I don't like to touch things that have an inferior build quality, especially if you really pay a lot of money for that. if we talk about sound, this is quite subjective. I know that. And the SPL BiG has its own niche. And if I would have to describe the sound, I would think of it as an effect that works in the context of the whole mix, which is something I really enjoy about it, because I thought of it as this classic ensemble chorus stereo Widener, but it actually made me think about sound and rooms more than before, because actually instead of just making everything wide and big, something you sometimes don't need, I was able to use the 3 dimensions that I have. And it's funny, if you think about it, what we're doing nowadays with Atmos from Dolby and all those like new standards that give us like a more 3-dimensional sound, I'm actually quite surprised how much we can do just with stereo. You know, if we have the tools, we can make stereo quite 3-dimensional. And the SPL BiG is one of those devices that gives me that gives me the control to place my sounds in the stereo field without any Dolby or surround editing. And that is lovely. Okay, so this is what I have to say initially about the SPL BiG. Sorry for that much talking. You guys probably know me by now, but I like to talk a lot. And I really enjoy the SPL BiG. I will do some audio demos in the next couple of weeks. No talking, just playing around with the parameters. If you would like to hear your tracks in the audio demo videos, just send them over. Please make sure that I can use them so that I don't get any copyright problems. That's what I had with some tracks in the past. Yeah, but this is my initial overview of the SPL BiG. I am Phable, and I see you in the next video.